It's Thursday, the 26th of May, 2022. Welcome to the Fast Five by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Amyler.
Good morning, Michael.
All right, Sean, we've got 5 stories to get through in 5 minutes. Let's jump into it. Story number 1. The Reserve Bank provided a bit of an assessment yesterday of the housing market. I'm going to try and summarise it in one line for you. They said, rents could rise in Sydney and Melbourne, construction delays could continue, and more people are looking for a patch of grass. How'd I do?
Well done, well done. Reserve Bank Assistant Governor Lucy Ellis said demand for standalone homes had jumped during the pandemic. People are increasingly living alone or with partners, and that's caused the average household size to fall. That's more than offset the reduction in overseas migration during COVID shutdowns. Also, all those adult children who moved back home at the start of the pandemic are moving out again. Ms. Ellis said as demand for migration picks up, rents in Sydney and Melbourne could rise quicker than expected. She said there's now an unusually large number of detached homes still to be completed, and construction time has blown out 50% to 9 months or so. Supply chain problems, skill shortages, the normal things are pushing up prices. Ms. Ellis had a good line saying there's a shift from the laptop class, the people who can work from home, so the laptop class are moving to outer suburbs. The good news in all this is that eventually things will normalise, though Ms. Ellis didn't quite give us a date for that, just when all the support measures work their way through the pipeline.
All right, story number 2, Sean, is kind of linked to story number 1. There are some figures out yesterday that show that home ownership, which is of course the great Australian dream, seems to be achievable for most of us.
Yes, it does say that. Look, about 2/3 of Australians own their own home with or without a mortgage. That's according to the Bureau of Statistics, and around 1/3 rent. Now, I remember talking to a banker once and they said of that 2/3, half of that, so about 1/3 don't have a mortgage, 1/3 do have a mortgage, 1/3 rent. The data released yesterday reflects the 2020 financial year. It also showed that about 20% of people have a second residential property. Now, people with a mortgage spend almost 14% of their gross weekly income, remember that's before tax, on housing. Renters spend about 20%. The average number of persons per household is 2.6, and the average number of bedrooms per dwelling fell slightly to 3.1. What I find interesting, 4% people say they need an extra room, which means 96% think they don't need an extra bedroom. I don't know who they are.
Sean, story number 3 today. New Foreign Minister Penny Wong is off to Fiji today. It is certainly not a holiday, though.
No, it's part of Australia's efforts to better engage with Pacific neighbours. She will commit to climate change initiatives, increase development assistance and security cooperation, and expand the Pacific Australia Labour Mobility Scheme, which allows Australian businesses to hire workers from Pacific Islands for seasonal jobs. Her visit coincides, almost competes, with a visit to 8 Pacific nations from the Chinese Foreign Minister. There are also media reports this morning that the Prime Minister will head to Indonesia and Papua New Guinea in coming months. Obviously, the new government is working hard to realign ourselves with our Pacific neighbours. And just before we leave politics, Jim Chalmers, the new Federal Treasurer, gave his first press conference yesterday. He said that the Morrison government had left a dire fiscal situation, and it's clear that there will be further interest rate rises. He said the defining challenges for the government are inflation, rising interest rates and falling real wages. And Labor will make a submission to the Fair Work Commission on the minimum wage. No surprises there, given Anthony Albanese during the campaign said he supported a 5.1% rise for lowest paid workers.
All right, story number 4, Sean. We've heard a lot lately about the proposed splitting of AGL Energy into 2 businesses. A lot of the talk revolves around billionaire Mike Cannon-Brookes, who owns a fair chunk of the business. He's been lobbying against the proposal. Yesterday, superfund group Hester said it will vote against the deal as well. And finally, I think I'm understanding why there is such opposition to it.
Right. Well, Hester only owns 0.4% of shares on issue, but it does have plenty of clout within the shareholder community. AGL management wants to split into 2 groups, one housing the dirty assets, such as the coal-fired power stations, the other the cleaner assets, including the energy retailing business. As you mentioned, Mike Cannon-Brookes, who owns 11%, has been lobbying against it. So Hester boss Debbie Blakey came out yesterday and said splitting the company wouldn't help decarbonise the economy, which is in the best interests of her members. She said responsible investors couldn't just divest the problem away, but had a responsibility to try and change the behaviour of big emitters. We're seeing a lot more of this the big shareholders pressuring management to do something on their watch rather than passing on to someone else, or in this case, divest it into a different company.
All right, story number 5, and we have saved a cracker for last, Sean. One of the world's biggest trading companies, Glencore, has admitted to bribery and market manipulation and says it will pay $1.5 billion to settle lawsuits in the US, in the UK, and in Brazil.
Huge numbers. Now, Glencore is a massive business. It produces and markets a range of metals and minerals, copper, cobalt, zinc, iron ore, etc. It's had a bunch of lawsuits hanging over it and now has pled guilty to charges that range from bribery and corruption in South America and Africa to price manipulation in US fuel oil markets. Glencore paid more than $100 million in bribes to government officials in Brazil, Nigeria, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Venezuela. Wow, what a big fine, but finally, or hopefully, they're getting on top of it.
All right, that's it. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Thursday, the 26th of May, 2022. Remember to hit follow on the podcast, and if 5 minutes isn't quite enough for you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed on your podcast platform. And if you want the lighter side of business, every Thursday we release Safe Word by Fear and Greed. You can find that wherever you listen to podcasts as well. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.